Oh, he just came out and said it.
Of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen?
He knows he
Stephen?
He knows what he just said.
Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue.
Plenary authority. Plenary authority. Remember that. That's what he's claiming. At least now we know that his fear response is freeze. And if you're not sure what plenary means, I gotcha. Complete in every respect. Absolute. Unqualified. No, not that type of unqualified. Though in that case, yes. What little SS Miller is claiming here is that Trump has complete unlimited control over the military to do with it what he pleases. No. And by the way, we need to make sure that this ends up in the hands of all the state's attorneys. They need to know for all their legal battles against the White House that someone from the White House and very high up in the administration is arguing plenary authority. And the funny thing is, he immediately realizes he messed up. This whole technical difficulty thing does not make sense. That's not what happened here. Little SS Miller was talking completely uninterrupted, said a word, and then froze. By the way, if you needed any more confirmation about the brain power behind this hate, if the audio had just cut out, he would have had no idea because he was the one talking. If he started getting a different audio issue, maybe like a weird noise or interference, he would have said that, or at least any normal human being would have said, I'm getting a weird noise. This was little SS Miller realizing immediately that he really stuck his foot in it. He said the quiet part out loud. One commenter even suggested that perhaps he had been rehearsing this argument to roll out at a later date. And I think that that might not be far off. Maybe it wasn't so much rehearsal, but it's clear that this is language that slipped out because that is how he's viewing it and how he's talking about it. They are prepared to claim complete, unlimited authority to do whatever he wants with the military. Wake up. By the way, if you wanted any confirmation of why AI overviews or tech companies are not your friends, when I went to pull up US Code Title 10, which by the way, everyone should download before they try anything sneaky, it was clear people had been looking this up because the top suggested search was US Code Title 10 plenary authority. I clicked to see what people were being served up. And sure enough, in the AI overview, it says that while the US Code does not explicitly use the term plenary authority, instead it defines the authority of the president to call members and units of the National Guard into federal service to suppress rebellion, repel invasion, or execute federal laws, which is a form of broad or plenary power over military forces. And I think it's important that we understand what's happening here because too many people are relying on these AI overviews and ChatGPT, which by the way, you should never go to for factual answers. Plenary does not mean broad. Some people may use it that way, but it means unqualified. Absolute. And by definition, even according to this AI overview, the fact that the powers are defined and limited to specific circumstances makes them not plenary. That qualifies them. Now, can you debate exactly how broad those powers are under those specific circumstances? Sure, and they are. This is also not the only place in our legal code where these powers are defined or limited. Lastly, by the way, even if we were to just look at this statute, even if he calls the National Guard into federal service to quote unquote quell rebellion, quote, orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of these states. And guess what? Governors, while they have to follow federal law, cannot be compelled to follow a presidential order because we have something called the anti-commandeering doctrine. It's part of that little states' rights thing. Basically, the principle is that the federal government cannot take over or commandeer a state government to use it as part of the federal government. Ojo, or oye, as it were. It's called a doctrine because this is Supreme Court interpretation of our Constitution. The idea that commandeering would violate the structure of federalism, which means, and yes, you already see where this is going, that the Supreme Court could in fact decide to walk that back. However, that still doesn't give the president plenary powers over the military. The good news, if you can call it that, is that number one, this isn't surprising that this is their goal. Number two, if attorneys are made aware of this, at least they can start preparing their arguments against this language that's obviously going to start being rolled out as part of some argument or another very soon. The third bit of good news is I figured out what Stephen Miller sounds like. First, what you gotta understand is that because he's trying to come off as tough and he's a little baby, he's in a perpetual pout when he talks. Like this. Number two, you gotta understand that he's a California boy. So you gotta place that pout on one of the characters from SNL's The Californians. I'm totally taller than 4'10". Oh, and the last bit of good news is I'm fairly certain he had to go change his pants after that interview.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mesuba. So today's guys, we will be breaking down a strange clip that's been floating around. Stephen Miller, former Trump advisor, freezing mid-interview on CNN while talking about plenary authority to use National Guard. Now, some people are calling it a glitch. Others are spinning conspiracy theories. But let's look at this critically from a left-wing perspective. So, Miller says, under Title 10 of the US Code, the president has plenary authority, and then, boom, he freezes and calls it technical malfunctions. But here is the real issue. It's not about whether his camera freeze. It's about what he was saying before that happened. Miller's words reveal something deeper, a mindset that believes in authoritarian power. And that's what's dangerous, not the freeze, not the so-called glitch, but the idea behind it, that the executive branch can use the National Guard against civilians or push political agendas. And notice the silence after the clip. No statement, no clarification. That's how propagandas work. Drop a scary phrase, vanish, and let the internet fill the blanks. The right-wing ecosystem thrives on that confusion.
The one thing that I like about this administration is the fact that they always tell on themselves. Whether it's an accufession, aka an accusation that is really a confession, or whether it's Stephen Miller admitting on live television that this administration thinks that the president has unlimited power. Checks and balances, forget about it. The supremacy clause, forget about it. I'm going to play the clip where he not only slips up and says this, but then he pretends to be frozen and just shuts the fuck up and then tries to pretend like his internet connection dropped. Like, just watch.
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen?
In his earpiece, shut the fuck up.
Hey, Stephen, can you hear me?
Pretending he's frozen.
It seems, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that.
What is plenary authority? Why was it such a big deal that Stephen Miller slipped up and said this? Well, according to the Cornell Law School website, plenary authority is power that is wide-ranging, broadly construed, and often limitless for all practical purposes. Limitless power. As the President of the United States of America, I don't think so. I don't think that's how it was supposed to work. But then again, in my own opinion, the Constitution of the United States of America was null and void on January 20th, 2025, when a constitutionally ineligible president was sworn in. See Section 3 of the 14th Amendment for more details. Not going to go into it. Honestly, this is much worse than I thought it was going to get. Truly, I at least thought that he would expire before it got this bad, but bro is still rotting away on this earth.
The reason why Stephen Miller froze up when he brought up plenary authority is because it's probably a little too early to be admitting that you are going to be ignoring any and everything all these judges say. It's also probably a little suspicious that you would bring up that the president fully plans on ignoring any judge's rulings in order to fulfill this plenary authority after we saw a judge in South Carolina have their house blown up for disregarding one of his orders. The reason why he froze is because they are trying to get this agenda put in place without explicitly saying it. Because if they explicitly say it, they can be held liable for it. And if they can be held liable for it, this will turn the gears of everybody in our legal system that is willing to stand up to them and stop them. Now we will probably see more judges ruling to slow down all of this National Guard stuff. More judges that he appointed too. Because now they have said straight up, we're going to break the law. And we're going to use the military against American citizens. We have the power. We are going to use that power. And we don't expect anybody to stop us. But see, if they rolled this out incrementally as tensions were rising in these cities where they are upping the military action, if they rolled this out step by step and perhaps fell into a situation where somebody did something that whatever gave them the justification, that's one thing. Now, everybody will be looking for the justification that they're going to use to get the military out there. This really does mess up their plans. And the reason why they're fumbling this bag so much right now is because, like I said, all these people talking about Project 2025 being 50% done. Okay, yeah, that's all well and good. Project 2025 was supposed to be 100% done by now. If you read it, they were supposed to have everything sewn up in less than 180 days. That is 6 months or less. We are coming up on 10 months now. And the longer it takes for them to get this figured out, the closer we get to midterm elections. And now it's starting to look like more people in the government are going to be protecting these elections moving forward. And this regime does not like that. This regime is quite literally looking for any excuse they can to stop a future election from happening. So that's why we all need to be paying attention to what happened with Stephen Miller. We all need to be very, very aware of the fact that he brought up plenary authority, because most people probably never heard of it before he said something. Now the cat's out of the bag and they're in trouble.
Stephen Miller just slipped. On live TV, he just said the quiet part out loud that Trump has plenary authority. For anyone who doesn't speak legalese, plenary authority means absolute power. It's the idea that a president's authority is total and unchecked, and Miller wasn't talking about theory. He was defending Trump's power to deploy the National Guard anywhere without governors, without Congress, without any oversight. And that single phrase, plenary authority, cuts right to the heart of what our founders feared most. They fought a war to escape a king with plenary power. They built a constitution that divides power precisely to prevent it. The president commands the military under civilian law, under Congress, and under the people. When Miller invokes plenary authority, he's not citing American tradition. He's citing authoritarian tradition. That's the language of rulers who believe the Constitution is a suggestion and not a restraint. The founders didn't bleed to crown another monarch in the future. They wrote checks and balances to ensure no man, no matter how loud, rich, or vengeful, could claim plenary control over free people. The founders warned us that the greatest threat to liberty would come draped in patriotism, preaching power without limit. Stephen Miller just confirmed they were right.
Wow, Stephen Miller absolutely did not have a glitch on live TV. Okay, he had an oh shit moment where he said something that he fucking was not supposed to say. Check this out, and then I will explain after.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue.
Anyways, yes, so you can see, clearly not a glitch. You can see Stephen Miller's body move, and you can still see him blinking. Let's talk about what he said right before he froze, okay? He said plenary authority. It sounds like he was tripping on his words right before he glitched, but he was not. That's an actual thing, okay? I'm gonna tell you what it means right now. Plenary authority is the full, complete, and absolute power to act on a specific matter without any limitation. With him acknowledging Project 2025 and deploying the National Guard to all these cities, he said the quiet part out loud and then was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. I don't think I was supposed to say that. A lot of you guys don't seem to grasp the reality of the situation. Anyways, that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day and you are all safe and happy.
Stephen Miller just slipped up so bad on national TV that he stopped talking, freaked out, refused to speak, and he froze. They had to cut the program. Take a look.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon illegal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize.
That man looked scared shitless because you just know someone is in his ear being like, what the fuck did you just say? Did you seriously just say that on TV? So he stopped speaking. He doesn't know what to do. At this moment, the guy is his fucking pants. Now, plenary authority, for those of you who don't know, it means complete, uncontrolled, and unchecked power. And he's stating that under Title 10, that's what the president has. That's simply not true. Nowhere in any circumstances does a U.S. president have plenary authority. It's what he fantasizes. He's only stating it because this is exactly what he wants the president to have, which obviously, no shit, from what we saw at the Charlie Kirk Memorial, his speech, he creams at the idea of unchecked power. I mean, that's what these people want. It's pretty bad. My name is Mercedes Chandler. This was interesting to see. I mean, I've never seen Stephen Miller brick up like that. Give me a follow or you won't see my face again. Thank you. Goodbye.
This is Stephen Miller, and he's going viral because, well, he's Trump's advisor, and he's kind of a problem. And he's been talking about, white supremacy, his favorite topic. But we're going to bring it back to him in high school when he had a problem with, well, trash.
Am I the only one who is sick and tired of being told to pick up my trash? And we have plenty of janitors who are paid to do it.
Now we're going to fast forward to modern day era where, everybody went to this guy's funeral. And I can't say his name because, well, the algorithm and they don't like us saying his name. We're talking negative about him because they love to silence us, right? Yet they're not dictators. But they went to his funeral, and this is the scenery at that funeral. Trash everywhere, walking around it, stepping on it, didn't care. Even police officers who they love are picking it up, not the janitors that Steven said they wanted to pick it up. That's how we know every projection is a confession. Everything they say somebody else is doing, they're the ones that do it. So before you get a little infuriated by this guy, just know who they really are. Doses.
So Stephen Miller today tried to pull off his best impersonation of Mitch McConnell when he froze up on TV.
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen?
And he froze up at the exact moment when he said that a president has plenary authority. And if you don't know what plenary authority means, it just means total power that's unchecked. Pretty much without limits and checks and balances. And Stephen Miller saying the quiet part out loud made his brain go into airplane mode. And what I will say about Stephen Miller is that he has plenary authority over making people uncomfortable. And plenary authority over that receding hairline. And I genuinely feel like we got to real-time see a person's brain buffer while their face did a hard reboot. And personally, I'm not a religious person, but I believe that was probably divine interventioning happening on real live TV. Because God heard where that sentence was heading and decided to pull his Ethernet cable. So Stephen, next time you decide to come on TV and say the quiet part out loud on Glitch, you should probably just have Mitch McConnell come on TV and do it for you.
Sometimes the truth doesn't slip out by accident. It slips out because it's been sitting right there just waiting for someone bold or careless enough to say it. Recently, during an interview, Stephen Miller, yes, that's Stephen Miller, the one who helped shape some of the most extreme immigration policies in modern history, was asked about this current administration. And he said something that should have shaken the entire nation. He said the president has plenary authority. And then he froze. Not because the camera froze, not because of bad internet. He froze because he realized what he had just said out loud. That word plenary means complete, absolute, without limitation. So when he said that the president has plenary authority, he was literally saying the president's power should not be questioned, not by Congress, not by the courts, not by the people. And for anyone who still doubts that we are living under authoritarianism, that was the quiet part said out loud. Now, let's talk about what happens when a nation accepts that kind of language. When plenary authority becomes a political talking point instead of a constitutional warning. we begin to see the erosion of balance, the unraveling of the three branches of government that were meant to keep one another in check. We see it when judges are targeted for doing their jobs, like the federal judge who refused to hand over voter registration data, and soon after, her house was burned to the ground. We see it when elected officials, Democratic representatives, are unalived for standing their ground, and the response from leadership is silence. We see it when conservative men commit violence, even murder, against teenage girls for having a difference of opinion online, and the system doesn't respond with the same urgency it would if the roles were reversed. And through it all, we are told to stay calm, to keep trusting the process, to believe that the institutions will hold. But what if they already haven't? What we are witnessing isn't chaos. It's choreography. It's a careful dismantling of accountability, the normalization of impunity, and it's being hidden beneath fancy words like plenary authority. See, authoritarianism doesn't always come with tanks in the street. Sometimes it comes wrapped in flags and scripture, handed down through talking points, spoken softly enough to sound like patriotism, but loud enough to rewrite the meaning of freedom. And that's what Stephen Miller did. He revealed the truth about what's happening, not just in policy, but in principle. When someone in proximity to power says, the president has plenary authority, they are saying the president answers to no one. This administration is beyond the law. This is not a democracy, it's a throne. And the chilling part is, he meant it. Now the question becomes, how do we get out of it? How do we push back when systems that are supposed to protect us have been hollowed out from the inside? How do we respond when the courts, the Congress, and the Constitution itself are being treated like suggestions? The answer isn't found in waiting for a hero. The answer is in becoming one. We get out of it by refusing to normalize silence. We get out of it by rebuilding local power by voting, organizing, and defending truth like our lives depend on it, because they do. We protect the judges who still have integrity. We defend the journalists who are still telling the truth. We amplify the whistleblowers who risk everything to expose corruption. We invest in community power, because every era of authoritarianism has ended the same way, not through permission, but through people who decided enough is enough. And most importantly, we must reclaim language, because words create worlds. If they can use plenary authority to justify tyranny, then we can use constitutional power, collective action, and moral resistance to restore democracy. When Miller froze, he wasn't glitching. He was revealing. He realized that he had said what many in this administration have been thinking all along, that the law no longer applies to them, that accountability is optional, and that the people's voice is secondary to the will of one man. But here's the truth. They don't want to admit. No matter how much power one man holds, no matter how loud the propaganda gets, a nation's spirit cannot be ruled by decree, because power without legitimacy is temporary. And authoritarianism, like every system built on fear and lies, eventually collapses under the weight of its own arrogance. So yes, Stephen Miller said the quiet part out loud. But now it's time for us to speak the loud part back, to say we are not subjects to plenary power. We are citizens of a republic, and we will not be ruled by silence, fear, or intimidation. We will resist, we will rebuild, and we will remember that democracy is not inherited, it's defended. Every generation, every time someone says the president has plenary authority, we must answer, no, the people do.
So, don't get distracted by the freeze. The real manufacturing here isn't the camera, it is the ideology. When people like Stephen Miller talks about plenary authority, they are testing how far they can push authoritarian ideas into mainstream conversations. And that's exactly why we have to call it out every single time. Anyway, that's it for today. Stay informed, stay critical, and remember, democracy only works if you all pay attention. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my videos just to help the channel out.